Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to today's weekly Sohbet and Dhikr. I hope you are well wherever you are tuning into this from. Though I also recognize that these are still challenging times in which we live. I learned, much to my sadness, only the other day, that a great scholar and Sheikh of Islam in our time, Sheikh Abdul Qadir as-Sufi, passed away. He was convert to Islam from this country, and he was a great scholar of Islam that trained and introduced many other people to Islam. And there are a number of scholars, especially in the West, but also in other countries around the world, that are his students. So, our deepest condolences to Sheikh Abdul Qadir as-Sufi's family and friends, and we will keep him in our du'as and pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants him Jannatul Firdaus. I was also saddened to learn over the past week that Sheikh Bahauddin Adil, that's Maulana Sheikh Nazim's son and also the brother of Maulana Sheikh Mohammed Adil, has been fighting COVID. Alhamdulillah, from the latest update, we hear that he is getting much better. He's still in hospital, but he's getting much better. And we also pray for Sheikh Bahauddin's health, and he gets well soon. I mean, he's such a lovely character, and it's always sad to hear about people like that who end up fighting these horrible illnesses. We hope he gets better soon and he's no longer in hospital. Also, my friend's mother, Hajja Miriam, she's also not very well, and so we will keep her in our du'as and pray that she makes a swift and full recovery. And for anybody else out there who's either fighting COVID or suffering from various illnesses, we obviously pray for everybody's health and well-being, and we'll do everything we can to help people's health and well-being. I mean, it is a very testing time for everybody, and I think over the past couple of years we've all either lost people or seen friends and family suffer, if we haven't suffered ourselves as a result of COVID. So it is difficult. On a more positive note, I'd also like to wish a very happy birthday to Linux. Linux today is celebrating 30 years. Now, for those of you who are less technical, you might not know what Linux is. Linux is an operating system. It can be used as an alternative to Microsoft Windows on PCs. It also works on a number of computers. And if any of you own an Android phone, the operating system at the heart of that, the piece of software that makes the whole thing work, which everything else is built upon, is Linux. So if any of you got an Android phone, you're actually using Linux. And Linux today is celebrating 30 years, which I think is a remarkable achievement for a piece of software that has been developed by all manner of different independent people around the world working together. It's not been developed initially, at least. It had nothing to do with a big business or something. Linux isn't owned by one business. It's actually a community effort of programmers all around the world. And today, it's true that a lot of those programmers are employed by big companies, but historically that wasn't the case. So for this piece of software and the community that developed it to be celebrating its 30th birthday is really a remarkable achievement. And when you think that most digital devices today, that's what I mean by that, is not only computers, because it's true in computers, Windows still has a large market share, but digital devices as a whole So if you include tablets and phones, and also things like internet routers and automatic computing machines that work in the background at airports, and servers. Actually, most servers in the world are powered by Linux. I mean, so if you add it all up, Linux is actually the biggest operating system in the world, which is really, I mean, considering this was developed by a community of programmers and not by one company, it's a remarkable achievement. And it just shows what people can achieve when they work together. And this is something which, I mean, you might be thinking, well, what's that got to do with Islam? Well, working together. When people work together and they have a vision of what they want to achieve, and they work together to make it happen, they can make it happen. And Linux is proof of that. When Linux got started, there was no open source operating system in the world that was so widely used. There may have been a couple of little projects here and there, but I mean, going back, 1991? I mean, we're talking about the time when a lot of people were using things like Commodore Amigas, Ataris, maybe a few used Acorns in the UK within education and schools. Not so much home users. And people who use PCs, of course, were using DOS and early forms of Windows, like probably Windows 3.1, which are very basic compared to what you can do on a computer nowadays. And obviously there was also Apples out there, the Apple Macs. Quite a collection of different computer systems that in many cases couldn't easily talk to each other, let alone work together. And when you think nowadays that a lot of the world is actually powered by Linux, and that actually powers a number of different systems which are derived from Linux, such as Android, which is, of course, in most mobile phones today, but also various forms of Linux that are on desktop computers, internet servers. For those of you who don't know what that is, if you've ever used the cloud is stored on computers, which are, big warehouses full of computers, little tiny computers all stacked up one on top of another. And those computers are all networked together. They don't have screens, it's just the actual computing unit. But if you ever use the cloud, that's what the cloud is. It's all these servers. If any of you use Bitcoin or any of these digital services, they're all going through the cloud. They're all going through servers like that. And there are massive server farms all around the world that in these massive warehouses. And also any kind of internet shopping company that you use, like online service, that's eBay, Amazon, Shopee, I think they have in other countries. All of these are, they're using these massive servers. And the vast majority of those servers use Linux to make them work. That's the software that they run on. A piece of software that was started 30 years ago by a bunch of amateur programmers that were not employed by anybody. Now, of course, I mean, it would be impossible for that to be the case now, to be running all these computer systems that are mission critical without professional programmers being involved. So a lot of them are employed now. But it was not started that way. And it shows what can be achieved when people work together, when people have a vision and a dream of what they want to achieve. And they've achieved it in a massive way. Even today, I mean, even Windows, which, and Microsoft, the company which produced Windows, which used to be very against Linux, themselves actually produced their own Linux. And they also have a Linux kernel within Windows. in the latest versions of Windows. It's not powered by it, but it actually uses it so that it can perform various functions for those who need them. You wouldn't have thought that if you go back 30 years ago, that would be possible. That a group of programmers around the world that are only working together through the internet could have produced a system that would be powering most of the world's computers and phones and devices today. And everybody is using it. Even if you use a Windows computer, if you use any internet service, if you go on the internet, load up any website, whether that's a shopping website or a search website or anything, you are using Linux. And that is remarkable. And it's also remarkable in a world which has, in many other respects, become quite selfish. And people tend to only work for themselves. People, when it comes to work, generally are focused on profit and chasing money. I'm not knocking anybody with that, because that's the way the world is set up, and we all need it to a certain degree. But it is heartening when we realize that there are projects like this which are focused on vision and people working together, not necessarily with profit as being their first motivation. But of course, I mean, if somebody is a programmer working all day developing software, then, and apps and stuff, then you can't expect them to do it for nothing, because there's a lot of work involved, a lot of time. And there's also a problem, people that don't understand technology don't realize the amount of work that is involved in it. One of the things that I was doing for a number of years before I do what I do now was actually I was a computer engineer. I self-trained computer engineer. I used to build, repair, reinstall people's computers that had issues. And often, when people would bring me their computers and I'd tell them how much it would cost to put it right. And my prices were reasonable. I never overcharged people, especially a lot of the people that came to me were people who didn't have a lot of money. So I never, went out with the intention of overcharging people. But then what a lot of them would offer me for the work that was needed to be done, it was disappointing. And, when a number of these people actually depended on their computers for a lot of things that they were doing in terms of work, in terms of education, it's like they really needed that computer up and running. And I would give probably the lowest price that you could give. And in a number of cases, I was probably working below the minimum wage, not deliberately, but, if I took a computer off someone and says I'd fix it, I'd agree the price with them. And it took me a bit longer to put that computer right. I charged them what I agreed to charge them for the parts. But because it took me a bit longer to do it, I wouldn't actually charge for the extra time it would cost. Yeah, in reality, I was actually undercutting myself when I did that. But I knew if I actually didn't do that and I charged them, for the extra hours it cost, that in many cases that wouldn't be affordable for many of these people. So I didn't do it. Fortunately, not every job was like that. It would be like, I don't know, 1 in every 6 to 10 jobs or something that I would need to put in extra time than what I expected in order to put the computer right. But where that did happen, I didn't used to charge extra for it. And people didn't realize. And so, it was disappointing when I found that people would, not everyone, but some people would still try to, after they've negotiated the price with me, they know what it's going to cost. When they actually come to pay me, would sometimes offer me less and say, that's all I've got. And I'm sure, I mean, if this was my experience, this must be the experience of a lot of people in this world, especially people who are working as, independent, just on their own work, independent traders. And, when I think about it now, I mean, that comes down to respect. It's a matter of respect. That if you are giving someone less than what they are due for a job, you're not giving them the respect that they are due. And this is an important point, because the Prophet Muhammad, I mean, some of you might be thinking, well, what's this got to do with religion? Well, actually, it's got a lot to do with it. The Prophet Muhammad taught people that you should pay the worker who has done a job for you, you should pay them before the sweat touches the floor, or something like that. It's an expression. What it means is you should pay them quickly. You shouldn't make them wait for their money, what is due to them. And I mean, implicit in that is you don't deliberately undercut them either. I mean, obviously, you get a fair price. Don't pay more for a service than what it's worth. But at the same time, to pay people what they are actually due. And it comes down to respect and also harmonious communities. Because if people are not looking after workers, well, then they are a worker as well. And sooner or later, if that culture, which it has in many places, gets ingrained within a society, then that attitude is going to come back on you, because it's going to become normal that people do that. So when you are contracted for a job, then someone will also try to undercut you, and you will not be paid what you are due. And, then you are struggling to make ends meet. And it comes down to respect. And, also, what do we value? Some people will gather, in fact, probably we all do in this time, we gather things that we don't need. We buy stuff that we don't really need, which we will use 1 or 2 times, and then it will just be left on the side. It won't be used very much. And yet, how much do you pay for that? And other things as well. How much of this stuff, if we actually went around our homes and started clearing stuff out, would we realize we didn't actually need? Well, we've spent money on those things, which are products. And we may well have bought those products from companies which are charging very cheap prices, because they are not paying their workers properly in order to give us the cheap prices, so we'll buy those products. And we then accumulate more of those products than we need. The workers that are actually employed in the various companies that produce and deliver those products to us are not being paid what they are due. So they are struggling to make ends meet. And we've accumulated more stuff than we need. Whereas if the real prices had been charged, maybe we would have thought twice about buying some of these things, and the workers would have been paid properly. It's just things to consider. And it's about respecting people. It's about how we have an economy within society which is actually sustaining people and supporting people and developing and supporting communities rather than developing selfish egos, which are all struggling and increasingly struggling with each other because the competition is increasing and wages are shrinking. And so everybody ends up suffering as a result. I don't know if you're grasping what I'm saying, but try and think about these points, because there's a spiritual dimension to it. It's not just business. See, one of the things about Islam is it's a way of life. It's not merely going to the mosque and praying or going to the Zawariya and doing zikr. It is a whole way of life. The Prophet Muhammad SAW taught us that when we did business, to do business fairly, to pay people a wage which is a fair wage for them. It's also fair what we, are parting with as well. So it's not too much. It's a burden on the person who's doing the payment, but at the same time, it's a fair wage for the person who's done the work. So there's a balance there. And that the person who is the worker, that they themselves can then afford to pay what they need to pay in order to live without struggling. The ideal being, of course, that everybody is employed in a worthwhile activity. They are getting paid for that activity. And then they are able to pay other people that they need. So everybody is supporting each other. The way this should be working is it should be creating stronger communities. Our economy and business should be creating stronger communities. But the reality today is, while I'm not knocking every business, there are businesses that have that in their ethos, and they do a lot to help the society in which is around them, their workers and the community around them. I'm not knocking that at all, but in general, a lot of businesses don't do anything like enough to support their workers or their communities. And then we end up with disharmonious societies instead of harmonious societies. We end up with societies which are full of chaos and problems, homelessness, people who are, if they manage to keep their homes, but they're struggling, they're not being able to eat properly or feed their children properly. This is a reality. And it's even more acute within developing countries. It actually exists even within the developed world. In countries like the UK, Europe, and America, a lot of people who are doing well, they don't realize that. But if they actually, did some research and looked at what was actually going on around them, they would find that it's a reality. It is a problem here, even in developed countries. But when you get to developing countries, the situation is really acute. People are struggling for a bag of rice. Never mind more nutritious food. Fish and meat become luxuries. Fish or meat or protein sources of equivalent are essential to maintain human health. They are not luxuries. And yet, for a lot of people in the developing world, they have become luxuries. And they are struggling to be able to feed themselves and their families properly. And COVID and this pandemic and all the lockdowns have only made that more serious. What it's actually done is it has exposed economic problems within our societies. It has exposed the flaws within our own economic system and within the societies in which we live. And it has made them more acute. But the reality is they were there before COVID. It's just people are starting to become a bit more aware of them. And more people have been affected because more people have been impacted by these very same problems. But the problems were there already. And unless there is some, big changes in the way that we do business, the way we work, the way we pay people, the way we treat people, these problems are likely to continue when societies reopen. And if they continue, things are only going to get worse. And then we wonder why we get these problems. Why something like COVID comes along. Perhaps it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowing this in order to wake us up. In order to wake us up to what we're doing to each other and what we're doing to this world. But like, as I started, the Linux community is celebrating their 30th birthday. It's not all bad news, and there are a lot of good things happening as well. And we can only hope and work for the good things and hope that they come out on top in the end by the grace and blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think that's enough talking this week. But this is an important point about economy. And it's an important point to understand about deen, that deen does not exist in isolation of society. You can't just go along with all manner of wrong things and then go to the mosque, pray, and then afterwards go back to all manner of wrong things and think that that's all that you've done everything that you need to do as a Muslim. We all make decisions within our day-to-day lives. Now, for the average person, an average middle-class person, for instance, who's doing okay, they're not controlling anything, but they're doing okay. They have good money coming in for their family. They can pay for everything. A middle-class family can think how they spend their family budget. And when they're looking at products within the shops, they can choose whether to buy something more ethical or something which is less ethical and cheaper. They have that choice. It's true, poorer people don't have that choice. And if you're in that situation, Allah is not going to hold you to account because you're just struggling to survive. But the people who can afford it, you will be questioned. How you spent your budget, how you spent what Allah gave to you. This is a point that's in the Quran. Give charity out of what Allah has given to you. It's not just give charity, but it's you're responsible for what Allah has given to you. Of course, we all work, we work for that. But who gave you your job? Who enables you to live that life? Who could, at the moment, change everything around for you? And you end up in the same position as the homeless person who's sleeping outside the shops. I pray that never happens, but there's a point. It can, and it does happen to people. If you go and talk to some of these homeless people on the streets, you might think, oh, they're just beggars. If you talk to some of them, you will hear different stories. And it's true, there are going to be individuals who could have done more to help themselves. But you also hear from people who were doing very well for themselves. And suddenly something bad happened in their life and they lost everything through no fault of their own. There are people I've met who are sleeping on the streets of this country who have served in our armed forces. And they have ended up on the streets. You can't knock them for their service for the armed forces. They are people who have sacrificed for this country and served this country in an important way. And I'm sure if that's the case within this country, it must be true in other countries as well. We mustn't judge people so quickly just because of their situation in life and their unfortunate circumstances. The reality is, if we are doing well in our life, It is by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that could change at any moment. There are people who've run their own businesses and have ended up on the street. And you can't knock them for trying. So we have to be humble and appreciative of whatever we have within our life. And we need to also consider out of what we have and make the best use of it to help us, not just ourselves, but also to give something back to other people who are less fortunate than ourselves. And there are different ways of doing that, and I'm not telling you how to do that. There are different ways, and I'm sure you're all clever and wise enough to work that out for yourselves. But there are different ways of giving back and helping the community or helping people who are less fortunate than yourself. And these days, there's also different kinds of products that we can buy that are actually labeled, and they detail where those products come from, how those products are made, so we can make more informed decisions as customers. And we can, when we're faced with that situation, if we're in a position where we can afford it, we can choose. We can choose with our spending money. Where are we going to spend that? And if everybody does that, it will make a difference. If everybody can afford to. And of course, it goes without saying, but those who are in powerful positions, those who have been granted a position of power within society, whether it's a minister in the government, or a councillor on their council, or they run a big, powerful company, or involved on the board of some big company. People in these positions have more responsibility. The decisions that they make, and it could be you, the decisions that you could be making if you're in that position, you could make decisions which actually are more beneficial for people. Or you could make decisions which only make things worse. And I realize it's a balancing act because, obviously if you're company executive or you're on the board of a big company, you have to ensure that your company remains profitable. Otherwise, you can't help anybody if you can't help yourselves. But you can put in place policies which are beneficial at least to your employees. Look after your employees. If you look after your employees, then they will also help look after the company, and you'll be more successful. And also the communities which your employees live in. This is a consideration. Beyond that, it depends on the size of your company and what it's capable of. You can also look at where you source products from. But like I said, it depends on the size of the company, and you would know that better than me. But we all have to be responsible, and depending on our position within society, depends on what we're capable of doing and what we're capable of affecting. But Allah will question us about these things when we stand before Him at the end of our life. Don't think it's just a job and it's got nothing to do with your deen. May Allah forgive me if anything which I've said is offensive to anybody or wrong. All the mistakes are my own, and I give thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and my sheikhs for anything which I've said which is thought-provoking or inspirational or beneficial for people in one way or another. I'll start the dhikr now. Before we do dhikr or any other devotional activity, we always check our intentions. You don't have to read a formula like I do, but as long as you check your heart, check you're doing it purely for the pleasure of Allah. نويت الأبي نويت الرشد نويت القوة نويت الاعتكاف نويت السلوك نويت الريادة لله تعالى في هذا الجميع. And we begin with the kalima shahada. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. We seek Allah's forgiveness through the recitation of Astaghfirullah. Astaghfirullah, 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 Astaghfirullah. أستغفر الذي الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم وأتوب إليه إنه هو التواب الرحيم. يا مسبب الأسباب يا مفاتيح الأبواب يا مقلب القلوب والأبصار يا دلائل المتخيرين يا غيث المستخيرين يا حي يا قيوم يا ذو الجلال والإكرام وأفوض أمري إلا إن الله بصير بالعباد. وعليكم السلام. رابط الشريف. تستوي يا مداد. تستوي يا مداد. Your heart to the heart of your sheikh, spiritual teacher. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. صلوات الشريفة. We pray for blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad and his noble family. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم. 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 اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم 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 اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم. Alam Nasra Shrifa. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب إخلاص الشريفة بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الفاتحة الشريفة بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين صلوات الشريفة بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم 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 اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي قد اتيتني من الملك ولمتني من طول الحديث فاتر السماوات والأرض أنت ولي في الدنيا والآخرة توفاني مسلما ولقني بالصالحين آمن بالله صدق الله العظيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. إلا الشرف بنبي وآل وأصحاب كرام والأواهي أنبياء والمرسلين وقدماء شرعين وإلى أئمة أبواء وإلى مشايخنا في طريقة نقشبندية تيارية قصة إلى آل وجغان الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. There is no God except God. In Arabic, La ilaha illallah, 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 La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, 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 Muhammadur Rasulullah, alayhi salatullah. La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, la alayhi salatullah. La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, alayhi salatullah. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, Muhammadan Nabiyallah, alayhi salatu la ilaha illallah, Muhammadan Nabiyallah, alayhi salatu la ilaha illallah, Muhammadan Nabiyallah. Alayhi salatu la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, Muhammad al-Habiballah, alayhi salatu la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, Muhammad al-Habiballah. Alayhi salatu la ilaha illallah, Muhammad al-Habib Allah. عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله محمد الشافي الله عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله محمد الشافي الله عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله محمد الشافي الله عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله محمد المصطفى عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله محمد المصطفى عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله محمد المصطفى لا إله إلا الله 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 حسبنا ونعم الوكيل والله قوة إلا بالله الذي غسيم إلا شرف نبيس وآل وأصحاب الكرام وإذا وإيسى سادتنا والصديقون الفاتحة أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Dhikr Jalala, remembrance of God. Allah, 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 حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل وله ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Who Allahu Allah Hak, 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 Allahu Allah Hay, 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 Allah Hay Ya Qayyum, 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 Allah Hay Ya Qayyum. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Calling upon Allah's beautiful names. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yahu, Yahu, Yadaim. Yahu, Yahu, Yadaim. Yahu, Yahu, Yadaim. Allah, Yahu, Yadaim. Yadaim, 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 Ya Allah. Yadaim, 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 Ya Allah. Ya Halim, Ya Halim, Ya Halim, Ya Allah. Ya Halim, Ya Halim, Ya Halim, Ya Allah. Ya Hafiz, Ya Hafiz, Ya Hafiz, Ya Allah. Ya Hafiz, Ya Hafiz, Ya Hafiz, Ya Allah. Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Allah. Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Allah. Ya Ghaffar, Ya Ghafur, Ya Ghaffar, Ya Ghafur. Ya Ghaffar, Ya Ghafur. Ya Ghaffar, Ya Ghafur, Ya Sattar, Ya Fattar, Ya Sattar, Ya Fattar, Ya Sattar, Ya Fattar, Ya Sattar, Ya Fattar, Ya Mujib, Ya Mujib, Ya Mujib, Ya Allah. Ya Mujib, Ya Mujib, Ya Mujib, Ya Allah. Ya Muyin, Ya Muyin, Ya Muyin, Ya Allah. Ya Muyin, Ya Muyin, Ya Muyin, Ya Allah. Ya Mughith, Ya Mughith, Ya Mughith, Ya Allah. Ya Mughith, Ya Mughith, Ya Mughith, Ya Allah. Ya Wadud, Ya Wadud, Ya Wadud, Ya Allah. Ya Wadud, Ya Wadud, Ya Wadud, Ya Allah. Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. Ya Hanan, Ya Manan, Ya Hanan, Ya Manan, Ya Hanan, Ya Manan, Ya Hanan, Ya Manan, Ya Karim, Ya Karim, Ya Karim, Ya Allah. Ya Karim, Ya Karim, Ya Karim, Ya Allah. Ya Dayyan, Ya Subhan, Ya Dayyan, Ya Subhan, Ya Dayyan, Ya Subhan, Ya Dayyan, Ya Subhan, Ya Subhan, Ya Sultan, Ya Subhan, Ya Sultan, Ya Subhan, Ya Sultan, Ya Subhan, Ya Sultan, Ya Sultan, Ya Sultan, Ya Sultan, Ya Allah. Ya Sultan, Ya Sultan, Ya Sultan, Ya Allah. Ya Aman, Ya Aman, Ya Aman, Ya Allah. Ya Aman, Ya Aman, Ya Aman, Ya Allah. Ya Salam, Ya Salam, Ya Salam, Ya Allah. Ya Salam, Ya Salam, Ya Salam, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Salawat al-Sharifa. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم. 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 اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم صلي الرب وسلم على جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى كل أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين على الأشرف من سيدنا محمد الصلوات على أفضل من سيدنا محمد الصلوات على أكمل من سيدنا محمد الصلوات صلوات الله وملائكته وأنبيائه ورسوله وجميع خلقه على محمد وعلى آل محمد عليه وعليهم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته ورضاه تعالى عن سنتنا شب رسول الله أجمعين وأن تبينا بهم بإحسان وأن مجتدينا مدين وأن علماء متقين وأن أولياء الصالحين أما الشيخين أبتلك نقشبنديات ياريا كرسنا الله ومزكيا ونغلا تعالى جرت مباركة ورضاه تعالى دين من بركاتهم وقيوداتهم دائما والحمد لله رب العالمين الفاتحة أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم Ya Allah, shower your blessings upon the soul of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu and his noble family, his noble ancestors, his noble descendants, and upon all the previous prophets and their noble ancestors and their noble descendants, upon the household of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu upon the Sahaba Ikram, the Khilafah Rashidin, the Ulama, the Awliya, and especially my Sheikh, Sufi Abdullah and Maulana Sheikh Nazim, Ya Allah, raise their stations in your divine presence and bless their souls for all eternity. And also bless the soul of my beloved father, Richard Kevin Armstrong, and Sheikh Sharif Hidayatullah, all of the Wali Songo, Sheikh Yusuf, Gusto, Sheikh Adan, Badruddin, Sheikh Didi. Ya Allah, bless them all and raise their stations in your divine presence. Bless their souls for all eternity. Ya Allah, bless our mothers and fathers, our brothers and sisters, our grandparents, our aunties and uncles, especially our beloved spouses and children. Grandchildren, future generations. Ya Allah, shower our families with your divine protection and blessing and support. All times your support, Ya Allah. Without you, Allah, we are nothing. Literally. We are absolutely dependent on your support. And we cannot thank you with a worthy thanks. Ya Allah, forgive us. Bless our souls. Oh Allah, shower your blessings upon, especially today, Allah, shower your blessings upon the soul of Sheikh Abdul Qadir as-Sufi. Grant him Jannatul Fidus, forgiveness for any mistakes in life and reward for all his good deeds. Ya Allah, shower your blessings upon his family, his friends, community and students all around the world, and grant them to have constancy, steadfastness, patience, spiritual healing at this most difficult of times. Ya Allah, shower your blessings also on Sheikh Bahuddin Adil. Grant him a swift and complete recovery to good health. Ya Allah, also bless Haja Miriam, who's the mother of a good friend of mine, and grant her a swift recovery to good health, Ya Allah, and bless their whole family. Ya Allah, bless all of my friends, especially those friends who have been with me through difficult times and stood by me. Bless all of our friends, and bless everyone in our community, in our families and communities, and all around the world. Bless everyone in our human family, and grant us to be inspired in good ways, Ya Allah, through your prophets, through your awliya Allah, through your scholars, with good inspirations and blessings. Grant us to be inspired to live our lives in a way which is constructive, which is blessed, and grant us support in being able to live our lives like that. Grant openings in the world that allow us to be able to live wholesome, constructive lives. And grant us protection from illness, grant us good health, grant us well-being, and grant us all to be with you, Ya Allah, and not left with our egos, but to be with you and in the company of those who love you. And bless all the communities of life with which we share this earth, and inspire us all that we may find and implement ways that we can live more harmoniously with each other and with all the communities of creatures with which we share this earth and this universe. For the sake of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa Salim. Sayyid Rabbi wa Salim ala Jami Anbiya wa Muslim wa Likulin Ajmain. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladina an'amta 'alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi 'alayhim waladdallin. Amin. Ila hadrati Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وآله وأصحابه الكرام وإلى أرواح سائر الأنبياء والمرسلين وقدماء الشرعين وإلى أرواح مشايخنا في طريقة النقشبندية عالية كستان الروحي إمام طريقة وغوث خليقة شعبويد النقشبند وبدل الويسي وبكاري وإلى مولانا الشيخ عبد الله فايز داغستاني وإلى زند بير وإلى صوفي عبد الله وإلى مولانا الشيخ نازم وإلى قسطور وإلى الشيخ عدان بدر الدين وإلى الشيخ بادشاه وإلى الشيخ حبيب الله وإلى الشيخ هشام كباني وإلى الشيخ داود وسعين وإلى الشيخ محمد الديل وإلى الشيخ نور كباني وإلى الشيخ بهاءالدين أديل وإلى سائر سادتنا والصديقيون. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. I wish you all a very good evening. May Allah bless you wherever you are. If you're in other parts of the world, then a very good whatever time of the day it is. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.